It's a lay pastor story from Mary Star of the Sea. Just as I did last Sunday, I spoke at your masses, right? At Mary Star of the Sea, I spoke at all their masses. This is probably 20 years ago. And after the Saturday evening mass, this woman came up to me as I'm waiting out, like Rich was at the table. I was out at the table with Rich, the Rich from there. And this woman came up to me and she said, "I like what you said. It touched me. I want to sign up." And I said, "Okay." I said, "But I can't sign up yet. Are you going to be here tomorrow?" I said, "Yeah, I'm going to be here at all the masses." I think there were six masses coming up on Sunday. I said, "I'll be at all the masses." She says, "Oh, good, good, good." She comes back after the 7 a.m. mass. She said, "You're still here?" And I said, "Yes, I'll be here all the masses." Then she comes after the 8:30 mass. "You're still here?" "I can't sign up yet, but yeah." I'm starting to think she's kind of crazy, right? And she comes up to me almost after every mass. And finally she says, "Okay, I can sign up now." And I said, "Okay, good." She signed up to be a lay pastor. The next week, just like we're having this little training discernment right now, we had it for the people there at Mary Star of the Sea. Now, I don't know if you know Mary Star of the Sea, but behind the church, there's a walkway between the church and the hall, and then behind the church and the hall, there's an alley that you can drive a car through. So after the discernment retreat, which was an evening there, I'm leaving, I'm packing up and I'm leaving to go to my car. And I walk out through the alley. And who's in that alley in a sleeping bag? But this woman who signed up to be a lay pastor and who was just at the discernment retreat. The one who came up to me after every mass, okay? And I looked at her and I said, "What are you doing there?" She said, "Well, this is where I'm staying." I said, No. "Does Father know you're here?" "Oh, Father said it was okay." And I said, "Well, did Father try to get you into a shelter or find you a place?" "Oh, yes, but I think this is where God wants me right now." This is what she says. Now, to a guy like me, I'm starting to think, crazy, Twilight Zone stuff here. Well, I said to her, then I start to use my humor a little bit, and I said, "You just signed up for a ministry that involves making phone calls once a month to families." I said, and this is before cell phones, really. And I said, "I don't think you can afford a cell phone, and I don't see a cord coming out of your sleeping bag." I said, "How are you going to make those calls?" And then she said this, and this has stuck with me, and it will. Her name is Gerri Lynn, by the way. She said, "You know how I came up to you after the Saturday evening mass and told you I wanted to sign up, but I couldn't?" And I said, "Oh yeah, I remember." She said, "And then I came up to you after the 7, and I said, "Yeah." And then I came up to you. I said, "Yes, I remember." "And then I finally told you I could sign up." And I said, "Yes, I remember, Gerri." Then she said, "What I was doing from when I first heard you speak, I was going to the church, the homes there in La Jolla, not far from where the church is, knocking on doors, telling people that she was a member of this church, and asked if she could borrow their phones once a month." Now think about this. This is a woman who's homeless, living in a sleeping bag, who saw more need with the rich, wealthy people of La Jolla than she saw in her own life. And she told me when she got to a home, and they said, "Yeah, we go to that church, we heard that guy speak. Yes, we can allow you to use our phone. We'll create a schedule for you." Once she got that accomplished, then she came back and signed up. Whoa. The gospel tomorrow has some strong words. It talks about you have to be willing to hate your mother and father and kid and brothers and sisters, and you have to be willing to pick up your own cross and follow me, which is strong. It really doesn't mean you hate your parents. It just means you love God most, right? But the second part of that gospel reading tomorrow says, if you're a king and you're going to go into battle, you have to think it through. You got to plan it. If you're a builder and you're going to build a building, you have to make plans. Most of us don't do that. We jump into this thing called Christianity or ministry, and we just think, well, it'll take care of itself. No, tomorrow's gospel is going to tell you, no, we're supposed to make plans, supposed to think about what's involved, what we need to do. Gerri Lynn, who had nothing, was homeless, was making plans. She knew that she needed to be able to have access to a phone before she could commit herself to making the phone calls. Think about that. This was at the time, I can tell you how many years ago it was. It was about 27 years ago, because my daughter was just being born. And Gerri Lynn asked me what my daughter's name was, and when I said we named her Haley. So she came up to me one day, and she got Gerri Lynn, and she said, hey, I bought you a present for your daughter. I said, oh, really? They said, yeah, I got you a book. I couldn't buy it because I don't have the money, but they're holding it at the counter at the bookstore there in La Jolla, across the street from Mary Star of the Sea, if you know where that bookstore is. So she says that it's in your name. So I went down, I bought the book, came back, and I had Gerri Lynn sign it. But she has taught me so much about ministry. This person who I didn't know, who I thought was a nutcase, but really it was a person who wanted to serve God.